And we go. Hi, this is Corey Milligan, owner of New West KnifeWorks.
Hey guys.
I'm here with Brian Graham. He is a winemaker extraordinaire in Napa Valley. We are working together to help some wineries sell some wine during the COVID-19 when all the restaurants are closed. I just wanted to talk a second with Brian about, from a knife maker's or cowboy knife maker's appreciation of what goes on and what makes these Napa wines so special. Also, as kind of a Presbyterian, I never understood why wines would be expensive, as many people wonder about my knives. So when we moved our store to Napa, at the time I would say that, by volume, I would have considered myself an expert in wine, having drank a lot of it, but I never really had an appreciation for the higher quality wines. Maybe Brian, you could tell us a little bit about what makes a wine higher quality and why is it so expensive?
Well, quite frankly, the dirt's expensive. I mean, it's very, very expensive to farm this area. It's just scarce. There's very little of it, and everyone wants it. So when you grab a piece of land and you have it, I mean, we're very fortunate if you get into the 80s, but the land is expensive. It's expensive to farm, and then the yields are very low in these big red wines. So, you're not producing very many bottles. So you just got to take that and factor it all in for sure.
And yield meaning the grape plant doesn't produce as many grapes as some other plants might.
For sure. I mean, Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay produce a lot of fruits. Syrah produces a lot of fruit sometimes. Cabernet is on the lower end of pounds per vine. It's similar to certain yields of tomatoes. Like, there's some plants that produce a lot of fruit, a lot of tomatoes, and there's some that don't. And the ones that don't have the most fruit flavor. And so you also have the size of the berry. The larger berries produce more wine. And these berries that we're using are about the size of your pinky instead of your thumb. And so there's a lot less fruit, a lot less juice, makes a lot less wine, for sure.
I'd add some observations I've had. I've been so fortunate since we opened our store in Napa to have gone with several, including Brian, to watch the wine be made, like watch it be picked, watch it being sorted, all the processes. And, as a craftsman myself, what I came to appreciate is the level of craft in the making of wine. And there are, the premium wines, it's a lot more handmade. So a perfect example, watching the grapes being sorted, like every stem, every bad grape, like everything is with a lot of labor is being taken out of there.
And we're double sorting. We're double sorting, and then we're also doing a third sort, which is a berry sorting. So the first clusters drop into the sorting table, and you're actually pulling full clusters out if they're not perfect. They drop through again to another sorting table, and then again onto another sorting table, which is where you hand pick all the bad berries and anything else. So it's crystal clean. So there's a lot thrown out right there for sure.
And another thing that's just so cool to me, just because of the craftsmanship of them, but is the barrels, which I never appreciated. Not one that the more, maybe you can say, but I was just going to say the most expensive wines only use a new barrel, and maybe tell us about the cost of the barrel.
Well, so we're custom making. I make all of my barrels. I custom make them in France. I got a couple of coopers I work with, and they're made to my specifications. Every barrel is about $1,000 plus or minus, and there's about 25 cases in a barrel. So you have to amortize that out into that bottle of wine. So not only do you have the grape costs and the land cost, you also have the winemaking costs, the production costs, and you also have to factor that barrel into that bottle of wine also.
And the barrel, maybe just give us a quick, like the barrel, what does that impart to the wine?
Well, different things. It can be smoke and chocolate. It can just be a softening of mouthfeel sometimes, or it can be a lot of that baking and cooking spice, that Christmas spice that everybody loves, cinnamon and nutmeg and a little bit of clove, right? Certain barrels will actually also, depending upon the toast level, accent fruit. So get a lot more pretty, vibrant fruit flavors in the barrel. So it depends on what kind of wine you're making for sure, but it can be anything from a spice note or a tannin note or to a fruity note.
Cool. Yeah. So, before I moved to Napa, I thought it was just throw some grape juice in a wooden barrel and away you go. And so
Yeah,
I've certainly come to appreciate what a fine craft white winemaking is. And much like how we make knives, it's the perfect ingredient. It's handled perfectly from beginning to end. And that's what makes things incredibly special, but also is where the cost comes from. It's not just a factor.
well, we certainly have everyday wines. I mean, not all of them are crazy expensive, but it's situational, right? Everything's for the situation you're in. There's everyday wines out there, and then there's more special wines that you put in your cellar and you sit back. It's very similar to the knives I have of yours in my house. There's some I use every day, and there's some that my wife and I barely ever use because they're so special that you've custom made for us. But it's a fun craft for sure.
Awesome. Well, that's thanks, Brian. I think that's again to folks who maybe aren't super sophisticated about wine. I think it's a
Yeah.
lot of cool stuff. So thank you very much.
Okay. Absolutely welcome, Corey. Thank you.